All right, thank you. Okay, without further ado, I'd like to open the Committee of the Whole meeting agenda tonight for Wednesday, June 9th. Would we have roll call, please?
We have 11 present and 1 presiding.
Thank you. It looks like we're all here tonight. Awesome. And I see everyone seems to be in good health, and that's also good. Commissioner Sorch, would you lead us in the prayer and the pledge?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Fellow Commissioners, Almighty God, we implore you, look upon us and guide us this night as we make decisions which so greatly affect our community of Butte-Silver. Direct our thoughts, words, and deeds so that we please you and best serve our fellow citizens. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, John. Okay, at this time, we have an opening for any public comment on any items on tonight's agenda. I don't see anybody out there, and I don't know that we have anything to be read into the record on, okay, later on, okay. Okay, report of the chair. Well, I think spring has sprung. I'm not sure. But in the meantime, we will have springtime in the Rockies, which means it can change any day, any minute. I don't really have a report, although yesterday we did have our flagship meeting with our ARPA group. It was very interesting, and there's a lot to it. That's the American Rescue Plan Act. And I believe that we will have something forthcoming that for both the public to see and possibly the commissioners so that they know the steps that we're following in the timeline. But it's exciting. We already have half of the money that we'll be getting. It's put in a special budget, and we have a group, there's 3 commissioners, myself, Commissioner O'Neill and Commissioner Shea, and along with a lot of our staff putting together a plan for projects. So it's very exciting. Okay, so we will begin with section 1, bid openings, public hearings, and or presentations. We have 2 presentations tonight. The first one is communication number 2021-230. Dory Skrukrud, Greenway Project Manager, requesting Council of Commissioners authorization to request time on our May 26, 21 Committee of the Whole meeting to present an update on the Silverbow Creek Greenway, and we had that moved up to this date. So Dory, the floor is yours. Turn on your mic, please. Although we can hear you just fine. There you go. Thanks.
Yes, it's the voice that
Projects.
echoes across the chambers. Madam Chair, members of the Commission, thank you very much for having me this evening. My name is Dory Skrukrud. I am housed in the Community Development Office. My official title is Community Development Coordinator, so I do half my time is spent working on community development and economic development related projects, but my primary focus and pretty much my career has been the design, development, construction, and operation of the Silverbow Creek Greenway along Silverbow Creek in both Butte-Silver and Anaconda Deer Lodge counties. I always like to put Anaconda first. It's sort of an alphabetical thing. So next slide, please. So the Silverbow Creek Greenway, as I mentioned, encompasses 2 counties, starts at the end of Lower Area 1, follows Silverbow Creek about 24 miles into the community of Opportunity. They had managed the cleanup in 4 different sub-areas. I hope I don't say that because it's like speaking French to people. It's pretty much my language, but, and so as a result of that, to manage this project, the Greenway Service District was created. Under state law, it's a multi-jurisdictional service district that can represent multiple counties. And then in both Deer Lodge County and Silverbow County, twin ordinances were adopted so that we have the authority to make decisions. We can purchase property, we can sell property with your permission, we can enter into easement agreements, we can enter into contracts, we can, in some cases, pre-purchase material. You've seen us come to you in the past for us to be able to sign a contract to spend some dollars to buy a vault toilet for an upcoming project. So we have representatives. We have a 9-member board, 4 from Butte, 4 from Anaconda. John Reardon currently is representing the commission on the Greenway Service District. Bob Lazary is a Butte-Silver representative, and it's really awesome to have him on the board in his role as the Parks and Recs Director, and Chief Executive J.P. Gallagher had that seat prior to it. So we have 1 commissioner, 1 local government employee, and then 2 citizen members from each community. And we alternate every 2 years so that each county has a majority for a 2-year period, kind of back and forth. I have to honestly say, there has never been a split vote associated with this project. It really is a great project. The board has the vision of the whole corridor, not dependent upon county lines, so it's just been really, really wonderful to work with them. We have, next slide, please. We're just going to run through a couple photos. There may be some people here that never saw it when it looked like this. I'm looking at maybe you, but I mean, when I moved here in 1988, this is what it looked like. Next slide, please. So this is close to Butte. This is the Ramsey Flats area out just west of the Port of Montana. There were tailings in this area that were 16 to 18 feet deep, and it was spread across that broad floodplain. Next slide, please. This is within the Durant Canyon, which when I moved to Montana, you could drive your car through there. The bridges were okay, but this is what it looked like. And we all know and have heard that it was a dead stream, a dead corridor, no flora, no fauna, no insects, no birds, no bees. And so that was important for the state of Montana and the communities that had been impacted and not had this resource available to them for recreational opportunities to get this cleaned up. So part of the cleanup was the Streamside Tailings Operable unit. That's the remedial action. That's the responsibility to protect human health and the environment. And then there were restoration objectives that was trying to advance the baseline of cleanup so that recovery could be increased. We could start to create better habitat. We could add and invest in stream bank construction, stream channel construction. We did $3 million of additional tailings removal in the Ramsey Flats area. And next slide, please. So those were our goals and objectives, is to restore those wetlands opportunities. And sometimes, as you know, we had a long discussion 2 weeks ago about the pole plan. There are restrictions associated with these federal actions. There are things they can and cannot do. We wanted to work with the remedial action. We were able to weave our project together with theirs so that it could be implemented at the same time, so that we weren't undoing or unraveling something that DEQ was doing. Took us a while to get that coordinated. Land acquisition has been actually a significant focus of the work. Honestly, I have to tell you, in the state of Montana, it's hard to buy land that's not for sale. There were, to date, I just did the calculation in my head. To date, the Greenway Service District, along with a lot of great partners, private partners, and the City and County of Butte-Silver, we've secured about over 400 acres that was in private ownership that had not been secured through negotiations with ARCO. A lot of the property ARCO purchased because they intended to do their own cleanup. That property subsequently went to the state of Montana, but there were parcels in excess of, I think we probably have another maybe 125 acres out there that's still kind of standing out there, that was in private ownership. So we spent a lot of time and a lot of effort creating relationships with people and purchasing property for them at fair market value, was an appraised value. We also had some really great partnerships. The Town Pump Corporation donated a significant segment in the Rocker area. Not without getting an IRS tax deduction, but I mean, come on, more power to them. What can I say? So we secured our funds through the natural resource damage programs, Upper Clark Fork Restoration Grants Program. That funding came from the lawsuit, the state of Montana v. ARCO, and that was a natural resource damage lawsuit associated with the impacts to our resources, water and land resources, impacts to our ability as Montanans to enjoy these resources, the waters of Montana, et cetera. And so over the course of starting in 2000 we had 9 grant applications. We secured funding of $23.5 million. Of that, $7 million was actually spent or implemented by the Department of Environmental Quality. So when they went into the Ramsey Flats area and removed that portion that had been determined under the record of decision to be removed, we came in with the funds for them to remove additional tailings and enhance that cleanup in that area. We've spent approximately $13 million on access acquisition, access features. That includes trails, bridges, pedestrian tunnels, trailheads, and we can go to the next slide. So this is a pre-construction sequence. Next slide. You can see they're starting to, those banks and things like that, dollars that came from the Greenway Service District from our grant program, invested in the stream channel so that those channels could be enhanced. They could be more sinuous. They could have more ability to undercut. That's not a target of DEQ. That's not their design goal. Their design is to move sediment from upstream to downstream. They do not have to create habitat. They do not have to create an environment that's going to have plant materials dropping in and cover for fish and creations of shade for spawning and pools and eddies. Our dollars contributed to having additional restoration stream designers come in, and in a stretch they would be able to, you know, build some banks and do some sinuosity to it. And so it, excuse me. So again, this Ramsey Flats pre-construction, next slide, that's their removal. And what was interesting, along with removing the lion's share of the tailings, some of those tailings under the record of decision would have been left in place. It's really crazy. Imagine you have 16 feet of tailings. They were going to remove down to the last 18 inches and then treat that with lime. And we said, let's get it all out of there. So they did. And in fact, their strategy here was to over-excavate. So if you've been in that area from Silver Bow back behind the port, they're beautiful ponds. People want to duck hunt there all the time. It's really creating a really nice habitat. The built structures, and this map is available on the Butte-Silver website. So we built from Whiskey Gulch Station all the way out to Ramsey. And then we jumped a segment, and this is a typical trail bridge. Go ahead. We built out at Silver Bow, have a little station out there. Next slide. This was a pretty important project. We did this in coordination with DEQ. This is the most expensive railroad bridge in America, according to Joel Chavez. He said he'd never build another one, but it had to be replaced. They did some manipulations and moved that stream channel, if you remember what the rocker station looked like before the trailhead was there. So we built that underpass so we could get underneath the railroad. Additional dollars were able to improve the plant palette, expand the plant palette from just grasses. The objective of a good cover to DEQ standards is to control erosion. but that's all it's really doing. It's not creating habitat. It doesn't have woody plants. It doesn't have diversity that are going to create different kinds of habitats. So that's what we were able to do. This pedestrian tunnel under the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad was probably at one point in time, our biggest challenge. But amazingly enough, we had some great folks at the local level, our BNSF personnel here in Butte, and we were able to convince BNSF as a corporation to let us do this and put that tunnel in so we could get across that railroad. We had built that station, oops, go back. We had built the station out at Rocker, and one of the things that they'd always wanted out there was some sort of playground. There were promises made and promises broken. Well, we were able to carve out a little section of that trailhead area and working with the Parks and Recs department, and they had raised a lot of money to buy this play equipment so we could put this playground out there for the kids out in Rocker. And I think it was just a great example of partnerships. Next slide, please. We also contributed to the fish barrier in sub-area 3, and there goes my lingo. So that fish barrier is upstream from the Fairmont Road, where Silverbow Creek crosses under Fairmont Road. The purpose of the fish barrier was pushed by Fish, Wildlife, and Parks to protect the native strain of cutthroat that's in German Gulch, so trying to keep the purity of that. This has turned out to be an amazing place to go and watch the fish trying to go upstream. So I mentioned we have a lot of partners, the Department of Environmental Quality, the NRD, BNSF, also worked closely with Patriot Rail. We have 2 stream channel tunnels and a pedestrian tunnel under their railroad that we also installed. Montana Connections Business Park, we've worked with them at looking at appropriate land uses and things like that. Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, MDT. MDT seems to always be involved with this because you got roads crossing. And so we've created some great partnerships with that. Of course, Anaconda Deer Lodge and Butte-Silver Bow. And the Rocker and Ramsey communities, we've worked with them. They've been incredibly supportive. In the early developments of the plan, we also visited folks out at Miles Crossing, had a little community meeting there at Fairmont and in Opportunity. Most recently, I've been out to the Fairmont Homeowners Association in the last year to talk about the status of this project because everybody's anxious. And so next slide, please. We did get recognized, and part of the Silverbow Creek Greenway is part of this Great American Rail Trail that's going to go from coast to coast. And the segment of our trail that's built is already acknowledged on that map, so we're trying to fill in the gaps and getting some support and perhaps so there's some other resources that are available through the Rails to Trails Conservancy. Next slide. We've gotten a lot of good press for this. This landscape is completely changed, and it has created a wonderful opportunity for people to be on our trails. I really commend our Parks and Recs department. The best thing about Butte is the sun shines all the time, and they get out and brush off the snow, and people are on these trails every day, every single day of the year. And so it has been, and we're starting to see, I've seen bald eagles, I've seen heron, muskrat, got lots of beavers, got lots of birds and bees and bugs, so it's really been thriving. Our path to completion right now, we've been sort of struggling, and it's always the million-dollar question, is when can we get into Durant Canyon? And it's really interesting. Durant Canyon is the easiest piece of trail that we're going to build because we're putting a significant portion of the trail will be on the abandoned Chicago-Milwaukee-St. Paul Railroad. And that was the road everybody could drive through on. There have been some changes in the canyon as a result of the construction project by DEQ. They put some culverts in, they moved some bridges around. They have a big armored they turned that haul road turned that road, abandoned railroad, into a haul road. So it's a pretty armored kind of situation. They are in the process of unwinding their construction projects. For example, they had a borrow area out at Erickson's and a haul road that was pulling materials from there. They are now reclaiming that and obliterating the road. There are culverts on the property that was just transferred from Ulen Ranches to Butte-Silver. There are culverts that will eventually have to be removed, and that includes, so that would be restoring those stream banks where the culverts exist right now. We have advanced discussions with the Natural Resource Damage Program and the DEQ EPA about long-term funds for the operations management and maintenance of the corridor. At present, we use our grant funds to pay back Parks and Recreation. We have an agreement with them. In the future, we have some work that the road division is going to be having to do with us related to some land exchanges. In the record of decision in the consent decree, the final cleanup decision is predicated on the Silverbow Creek corridor to be a recreational corridor. And with the recreational corridor comes some of those things that you have to do to manage it to protect both remedy and restoration. And under the Natural Resource Damage Program, the loss of recreational opportunities was significant. That was a significant impact on all the communities along the corridor. And so we have started those conversations. We have compelled the Environmental Protection Agency, DEQ, and the Natural Resource Damage Program to come together for that long-term funding, and we will get it. At the end, we will get it. We expect to, our 2020-2021 accomplishments, we just acquired this in May, the 130 acres southwest of Ramsey, and I started those negotiations 19 years ago, so it's a struggle. But we're going to, in those negotiations, we're going to construct a cattle bridge over Silverbow Creek. That's part of those negotiations were that the previous landowner reserved that access easement. It's the reason why they bought the property in the first place. We're going to continue this land exchange out near Fairmont. A couple of years ago, and this is how long these things take, I came before the commission to ask the local government that Butte-Silver would accept the donation of property owned by DEQ. That includes the Chicago-Milwaukee Railroad and a parcel of land that they own. And it's all kind of a series of puzzle pieces to all come together. We are in the process. I just got the bid dates today. You'll see a letter will come to the commission. We are going to issue a bid package for those two projects. Reach O, sorry, again, there I did it. Fairmont Road back to the Gregson, to the Silverboat Creek Bridge that allows you to get up by foot up to German Gulch Bridge. I'm sorry, German Gulch. We call it the Gregson Station. And so that's a little bit over a mile. It's great. You'll be able to have access to the fish barrier. There's a small parking area. And then this bridge construction. So that is, I think, the preliminary estimates I have are about, I wrote that number down, a $950,000 project in total, and then some additional funds for oversight. So we're really looking forward to having construction commence this year. Every year that we haven't, it costs us money to not construct. So it's very important for us to get this done. And I guess I ought to say Durant Canyon, there's not much for us to do in there. We need to open it up, but DEQ's still in there. They have promised us they'd be out by 2021. So they've got, 6 more months of work to do in there. And so we're hoping that that's going to be a pretty smooth transition for us to get through there. Next slide. Next slide. Those are little teeny tiny itty bitty little maps that mean nothing to you, but next slide. We still have a parcel that is privately owned. There's sort of a hiccup in the middle of everything. Just west of the Port of Montana is a piece of property that's owned by Atlantic Richfield Company. It was intended to be transferred over under the consent decree. They agreed to transfer $2 million worth of property to the Natural Resource Damage Program. This was part of that transfer. It has some complications associated with it because it has unrelated waste material on it that is not a typical Streamside tailings. I'm getting word from my colleagues here in the Superfund Division, as well as folks at DEQ, that we're getting closer to some resolution with that out there, which means that we will be able to get in. It's about a mile stretch. So we're closely monitoring that and putting the pressure on. We do have we will be, and this is that last little kick point. If you go out to Ramsey and you look, you're going across one of the last bridges as you're heading to Ramsey. There's a little Y, and there is a concrete barrier. Our intentions are to go under the 2 railroads, and it's actually Raris's support construction road with an underpass underneath there. And we've been working really closely with both BNSF and Patriot. And we kind of just stood down on that because we need to make that connection then through this parcel 26. Excuse me. So hopefully we'll be seeing that soon. There'll be some pressure coming from both sides then. And we're also working with BNSF to go underneath Highway 1 in Deer Lodge County. And this is what it looked like. And it was really, really ugly when we would go on walks. So, and that it doesn't look like that anymore. So, are there any questions?
Thank you, Dory. I just want to say, if you've never been on that trail, it is amazing. And you can see wildlife, everything looks comfortable and peaceful and the way it should be. There's also some ruins out there from the Centennial Brewery, I think you can see from the trail, and also part of the Burlington mine. And I took a tour one time and they actually pointed things out. You might not know what they were, but it's just fascinating. And it's just amazing what has been done. I really look forward to the final connection down to Warm Springs. So, any questions for Dory? Commissioner Thatcher.
No questions. Just wanted to say thank you. I wasn't around, I guess, for all of it, but I actually went to Ramsey School, and so we were able to plant some willows along the creek down there closer to Miles Crossing. So just to see the transformation from when I was that age to now is amazing. So I thank you for all your hard work.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Thatcher, thank you very much. In fact, it's interesting. When we went out to Ramsey, the school kids actually, they would go out, they would take them out into that area and talk about the impacts of mining and things like that. That's one of the reasons why we have that little underpass. We said, if they're going to continue to do that, or CFWEP continues to take kids down on the creek, you probably just rattled on over the railroad tracks. I'm not quite sure how you got there, but so that again was a really great a partnership with Ramsey and the Ramsey School, and taking that into consideration associated with that location. Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Reardon.
I just want to interject a couple things here real quick. I think people just basically thought this as a trail connection, and after this presentation, as I learned, it was really well coordinated with the previous cleanup work that's been done. And I'll tell you what, you walk in this committee and you walk into Dory's office and there's nothing but energy coming out of that room. So this lady works so hard at this to make it great for the people at Butte-Silver Bowl, and I just wanted to thank her, and also Mr. Lazary for the Parks and Recs for the work that's been done out there too. Thank you.
Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I think 2 years ago I asked when you thought this was going to be done, and you said, hopefully in your lifetime, were your exact words. But the 2 years have passed, and there's so much progress. I feel like from the last presentation, there's just so much that's been accomplished. So I just want to say great job, and you do a great job, great work, so thanks.
Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dory, thank you. Great presentation. One question. Will the rail line between Anaconda and Butte through Durant Canyon remain there?
Ms. Skirkard.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Fisher, yes, Actually, the Anaconda line, the Patriot line, or what used to be Rarest Railroad or BGME, it's not my understanding that they have any intent to take that railroad out. And also Burlington Northern Santa Fe goes through the canyon also. They split and stay, sometimes they're together and sometimes they cross over. Patriot or BGME has actually changed hands 3 times since we did our original negotiations with them. They're owned by a company out of Florida that just kind of collects short lines. Yeah, I don't know, you know, it's having their big railroad train set, I guess, but you know, they still use that. Patriot does a run, I think, 3 days a week because they serve the mine, and then BNSF, of course, is in and out of that corridor 5 days a week.
Yep. Follow-up, Commissioner Fisher?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I recall the train used to go from Anaconda to the Butte Depot. It was a tour you could get on and ride through Durant Canyon, and we've done it a few times, and it was just a great ride through there, and it's the best way to see the whole canyon because you can't see it no other way. So thank you so much for your services and what you do.
Okay. Seeing no other questions or comments, thanks again, Dory. We look forward to the next phase, hopefully sooner than later. So.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. I really appreciate being able to talk about this project. I'm actually probably the luckiest person at Butte-Silver Bow to be working on this project. It's challenging and frustrating, but it also has a lot of, there's a lot of satisfaction. So I'll see you in August for a bit.
All right. We'll see you then. Thank you. Okay, moving along, we have our second presentation. This is Pat Canine, Public Works Engineer, requesting Council of Commissioners for time on the June 9th, 2021 Committee of the Whole meeting for a presentation with Bob Lazary, Parks and Recs Director, concerning the Basin Creek Reservoir. Mr. Canine and Mr. Lazary.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the council. My name is Pat Canine. I'm an engineer for the Butte-Silver Bow Public Works Department, and with me tonight is Parks and Rec Director Bob Lazary. And Basin Creek Reservoir is a very strategic asset for Butte-Silver Bow, and we've got a lot going on out there. And we just wanted to give you all an update, an overview of what we have going on, so you'll be informed. Next slide, please. So the first thing we want to talk about is the rehabilitation of Basin Creek Dam number 1. That's the large dam on the lower reservoir. We do have need to work on the top 11 feet. That's the concrete portion of the dam that was built in 1911, and it's on top of the granite blocks that were put in place in the early 1890s. We need to shore up that concrete portion of the dam. We have put in for 2 grants through Montana in this last legislature. The first was a renewable resource grant with the DNRC, and that we received funding for $125,000. The second grant was from the TSEP, Treasure State Endowment Program, and we were awarded $500,000 on that grant. And we did have several members of this community, some on this council, that wrote letters of support for both those efforts, and we thank you for that. That rehabilitation project, we have 3 alternatives that our engineer, Great West Engineering out of Helena, developed for us. They range from just replacing the parapet wall and anchoring the concrete portion into the granite portion of the dam, and that option is about $1.24 million. The second option goes farther than that first one in that we would also replace the downstream, or excuse me, the upstream face on the dam that's in contact with the water. And the third, and that option is about $2.1 million. And the third option would be to remove and replace the entire concrete portion of the dam and dial it into the granite portion of the dam. And that option is estimated at $4.34 million. Butte-Silver also put in for a FEMA BRIC grant. BRIC is, I had to write this down, it's tricky. Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities Grant, BRIC, and that grant we asked for $2.5 million from FEMA, and we should be hearing sometime this month on that one. Okay, and this is the schedule moving forward. Once we've secured our funding, we go through the steps there on the chart on the right portion, and hopefully we're all done by 2023 or so. And we still have a lot of work to do there, so. Okay, the next project we'd like to bring to your attention is an aquatic passage project, and this is being sponsored by the Montana Natural Resource Damage Program. And basically what it is it's a fish ladder to move the native cutthroat trout out of the lower reservoir back into the stream that connects the upper and lower reservoirs, and that's where a lot of the spawning habitat for the cutthroat are. And we have an agreement in the works with NRDP to do this, and we expect that if that agreement is signed, that NRD would start doing the work this fall. And this next slide shows what that project will look like. The pool of water you see in the picture is what we call our sediment basin. So from the upper dam or the upper reservoir, there's about a 1 mile stretch of creek that drops into the lower reservoir. And this sediment basin actually collects sediment as the water travels down. And then about every other year, we clean sediment out of that pond. And if you go back one. You can see the little circles downstream of that sediment basin are what we call the step pools. Cutthroat trout typically can jump about 9 inches, so each one of those pools is about 9 inches above the lower one. I think there's, like, I can't remember, 14 or 17 pools there, and they have to negotiate. It's about 15 feet from the overflow of the basin down to the water level on the reservoir. And you can see that in this picture. So the flat water in the bottom of the picture up to, you can just barely see the grass at the top of the picture. That's about 15 feet, so it's almost impossible for the cutthroat trout to get up there through that pipe and back into the sed basin above. So this step pool project would allow the cutthroats to move on by, and it would keep the integrity of our sediment basin intact. The third project we'd like to bring to your attention is a fuels reduction project. And what we have out there, I think most of you are aware that we've had pine beetle devastation throughout the East Ridge and the Basin Creek watershed. And once those trees have died, they become kindling. And we've got a lot of that up in the Basin Creek watershed. So our hope is to remove as much of that dead timber as we can, to reduce the fuels if there ever was a wildfire. And what wildfires do is they remove that vegetation and the live trees as well, and it basically ruins the root mass and the other vegetation there, and so that increases erosion, and that would allow sediment to get down in the reservoir, and it would be very hard to treat the water with a lot of sediment in it. So our hope is to reduce the fuels as much as we can, and we've worked with the U.S. Forest Service and the Montana Department of Natural Resources and Conservation to get this going. This spring, our crews, managed by Dan Emmett of the water company, have gone in and removed all that we could on county-owned property. And we'll just flip through these next couple of slides and show you what the effort has looked like. So that's what it looks like up there. Lots of deadfall, lots of standing dead. And if you look at this picture, keep your eye on the tree right in the middle. So this is an after shot. If you could go back one, Josh. Go back one more. So that's what it looked like before our crews got in there. And then they cleaned it up, and this was what it looks like after. So they've done a great job removing as much fuel as they can. And this is another before and after. Keep your eye on the little aspen tree with the white bark on the left. Go back. That's before. You can see all the timber on the floor now after. You see they've done a great job. We can only cut the trees that are on our property. The rest belongs to the Forest Service, and that's the majority of the watershed is USFS property. And they are looking at, you can keep going, Josh. And that's our crew up there removing the deadfall. And what we did is we took that deadfall and we took it down to the parking lot at the Reservoir Park and just allowed people to hog it out as firewood. And it disappeared pretty quick because it's good burning stuff. And if you take a look at these photos, it just shows you what the pine beetle does to a lodgepole pine. They bore in it, and you can see the little worm trails in it. And I think a lodgepole about 80 years old are very susceptible to the pine beetle, and that's the age of this forest, was about 80 years old. The U.S. Forest Service also has what they call an aspen project, and what it is they are allowed to cut a conifer within 100 feet of an aspen to give the aspen a greater chance to revive, and aspen provide more diversity to the forest and are pretty key in the riparian areas. So if you look at this slide, go back to the map, all the colored areas are areas where the U.S. Forest Service plans to do their aspen project. If you look at you can see the water body right in the middle of the top middle of the map, and the gray areas are basically properties that Butte-Silver owns. Way on the right, that gray property is Thompson Park. So they're going to be all throughout this watershed cutting the conifers that are close to aspen. And then Tim Leahy from the U.S. Forest Service, he's the new district ranger for the Butte District. He provided us with a couple of shots here. And in this picture, it's kind of difficult to see because your eye goes right to all the deadfall, but if you look at the vertical, you can see a few little aspen trying to poke up through all that deadfall right in the forefront of the picture. And then in this next slide, way in the back, you can see more aspen trying to take a foothold in this area. And one of the projects we needed to do before we could allow public access is we want to protect all the water company infrastructure, including the dam. We don't want anybody on the dam. We don't want anybody getting into the infrastructure we have below the dam. So we erected this fence last fall to prevent people from straying into those areas where they don't belong. So this fence goes from the bottom of the ramp at the caretaker's house, goes all the way up the ramp, and then over the dam and actually down into the water. So we hope that people will obey and stay behind the fence. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Lazary to talk to you about the fishery and also the potential for public access.
Mr. Lazary.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, thank you for having us. I'm Bob Lazary. I'm the Parks and Rec Director for Butte-Silver. So this is a pretty exciting project. You know, people have been waiting to have access up here at this reservoir. Back in 2020, the biologist set out 3 nets, tested the fish, and came back, said there's too many, it's too dense of a population up there, as you can see by the numbers right there. The fish are small, and they're stunted. Go ahead, Josh. So with this, once this opens up, we'll have a voluntary regulation when people are fishing up there for them to keep one fish. And at the end of this year, we'll go back up and we'll test those waters again and see what the population is. The thought is harvesting fish up there will result in a healthier fish population. They'd like to sustain it as wild West Slope cutthroat fishery also. Next one, Josh. You can go to the next line. So the NRDP, they will pay for us to have a camp host, porta potties from 2021 through 2023. We'll be open roughly Memorial Day to October 1st. It might be middle of June to October 1st to allow for the the cutthroats to spawn in the early June area. We'll open that gate from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. They have access only to the 1 mile on the east shore of the reservoir once they get on top of the reservoir. It's a walk-in area only. There's no motorized vehicles allowed. There's hiking, biking, picnicking, fishing. Let me go to the next one. There's no fires allowed, no swimming, no watercraft, overnight camping, no live bait. There's no wading in the water. Again, we're trying to protect Butte-Silver's water. That's the balance. Offer recreation and also protect our water. Next one. So the seasons could be interrupted with a few things. Like Pat talked about construction on the face of the dam. That could have something to do with it. When we build those fish ladders he was talking about. If the water temperature gets low, or high, excuse me, it's too stressful for the fish, that could close it early. If the water level gets too low in the reservoir, again, we would have to close the reservoir. And also, if, like right now, through a drought, there's a higher risk for wildfire. But again, the highest and best use for this reservoir is for our water. So we need to closely monitor the activity with this, the help of this camp host. So with this camp host, you can go next one, Josh. So you see, we pay the camp host $50 a day. It could be 122 days. So that's $6,100 a year. At the porta potties, we'll have 3, one at the bottom of the ramp, at the middle, and up on top next to the reservoir. So that the total is $600. So for the next 3 years, they will reimburse us $20,100 over the next 3 years. You go next one, Josh. So along with the camp post up there, Trevor Peterson, that's our arborist, he'll help monitor also. He lives up there, and so every day he'll go drive up, take a look at it with a camp post. I think we have a pretty good plan on keep monitoring who's up there, what's happening, and see what's happening to the fishery. So that's been a plan moving forward. Any questions?
Thank you, Les. Commissioner Sorge?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First off, I want to say that the wood cleaned up out of there, that looks great. I know 20 years ago they tried something similar to that down in Thompson Park, and our chief executive at the time almost got hauled off by federal marshals because they were going to, because it was in partnership of Forest Service and Butte-Silver. We told them, go ahead and do it, and she almost got hauled off. Anyways, my question is to you, is this camp post, is he going to have any kind of enforcement authority to write tickets or anything? You have some of these, I guess you want to call it rules?
Yes, so Commissioner Sarch, that's a good question. So he will be there for information. He'll offer the rules to them, explain the rules. He doesn't have authority to write tickets. Basically, he will keep a log what's happening. He will have a phone. He can call back, to our office. If something unlawful, he can call law enforcement. It's just kind of a test period, so hopefully that doesn't happen. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Last, I had a question. The caretaker house, I know, is in the process of being restored. Would the camp host eventually be staying there, or is he on a day basis? Does he just come in for the day and leave?
Madam Chair, so we have no plans to use that caretaker's house right now.
Okay.
So the camp host will show up with his own recreation vehicle. He'll park there and get paid $50 a day, so he'll stay there throughout the contract.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Excuse me.
That's okay. If I can
Mr.
just
Kneen.
add to Bob's response to Mr. Sorch's question. Also, we have talked with the Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks folks, and they are willing to have their wardens go up there and patrol quite a bit this first year. So we hope that, along with the presence of a camp host and hopefully good citizens up there, obeying the rules and having a good time, we'll keep people in line.
Good. Thank you. Commissioner Frederickson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Canine and Director Lazary. I was able to take a tour of this not too long after the fence was put up through SARTA, and I always appreciate your tours. So you've given us a few over the years, whether it's the Tailings or up at the archives. So I always appreciate your presentations. I just, when I was in, Chief Executive Gallagher actually drove me around when he was Parks Director on that trip, so I appreciate that too. But I was somewhat skeptical about opening this up to the public before we took this tour. And I will say, once we got up there, it's pretty clear that people are already being there, whether they're hopping the fence or getting up there. So I think that after seeing what's going on up there, I think that this is a good thing to have, some sort of watchful eye on it, and hopefully people will respect it, and because it's a really sweet place. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Any further questions? Commissioner Reardon?
My question is that basically with such a confined area, I myself haven't been up there. Is there a certain limited amount of people that can be up there? Because you know what's going to happen around the good old Butte, The word will be out and there'll be an onslaught up there. Are you going to try to do anything with a situation like that?
Lazary? Mr. Lazary?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Commissioner Reardon. So we are not going to limit the numbers right now. We're going to let it play out, see how they behave, what kind of numbers go up there. We're kind of hoping that people do respect what we're offering right now. But again, this is the water for Butte-Silver Boat is a top concern. So we'll have that host up there watching it. And again, Trevor will be up there every day. So we just hope that's enough to maybe mitigate any problems. And as Commissioner Frederickson said, people are using that already illegally. So maybe this will help curb some of that.
All right. Thank you. Great job.
Thank you.
One last question too is when will we start inviting people to come in? Are we doing that already, or is it?
As soon as we have a camp host in place,
Okay, that's great.
Madam Chair, and also we hope to post that position within the next day or so.
Oh, good.
And hopefully pretty soon we get someone out there.
Thank you. Any other questions from council members? Thank you very much, both of you, with the updates. Very exciting.
Thank you.
A long time coming,
Yep.
so,
Thank you, Madam Chair.
okay. Okay. Moving on to our Section 2 communications. The first item is communication number 2020-411, Brenda McDonough, Commissioner District 8, requesting Council Commissioners' consideration that Butte-Silver Boat take over the outside maintenance of the Community Ice Center located at Clark Park. The original operating agreement had the Butte Amateur Hockey Association maintaining the grounds. However, I think Butte-Silver Boat should assume the maintenance, and if you'll notice, this came out of Public Works. It really belongs in the Committee of the Whole in general. So I will call on Commissioner Reardon to give an update.
We had the Public Works meeting tonight, and we visited the meeting before on this with Chairman Fisher, and a meeting is in the process of being set up to complete this process with the members involved, Parks and Rec, commissioners, people with the Amateur Hockey League. So everybody, especially the people in my district, are looking for a end to it, I guess the word is, for the facting that they do have a lease, and in that lease is included is the upkeep of the building and also taking care of the grounds around the building. So I'm hoping that this will come to a head here within about the next month or so. So thanks for your patience.
Thank you. Any questions? Otherwise, we will continue to hold this in abeyance. Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to follow up on that, I believe they were reviewing the lease. I was just going to ask the county attorney if she'd seen anything from anybody, and if not, that will come after the meeting of Public Works Director Neary and Director Lazary and a couple of the commissioners who've agreed to do it, and meet with a couple from the Hockey Association. So if she's not heard anything, she will in the near future. Thank you.
County Attorney Joyce?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Fisher, no, I haven't.
In a word, no.
You will in the future.
Thank you. Okay. Well, without any further ado, I think we can just hold this in abeyance until the next committee of the whole meeting. Thank you. And I do believe Commissioner Frederickson mentioned earlier that there is an upcoming Parks and Recs meeting, and that maybe that would be...
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. We do have a Parks meeting on Monday, and I spoke with Director Lazary, and you know, he's hasn't spoken lately with the Butte Amateur Hockey Association, but like Commissioner Fisher and Commissioner Reardon said, it sounds like they're going to be having discussions.
Okay. Thank you. Item 2, communication number 2021-217, Jim Fisher, Butte-Silver Commissioner, District 6, requesting Council of Commissioners authorization for the Chief Executive, J.P. Gallagher, to invite someone from the DEQ and EPA to our council meeting to update and explain the cleanup and future use of the Montana Pole site. We did have that meeting, unless Commissioner Fisher would care to comment on that, I would defer to my Vice Chairman, Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to place communication 2021-217 on file.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to place communication 2021-217 on file. Is there anything on the question? Would everyone please vote? No pressure, Josh. Would anyone care to change their vote? Would the clerk please record the vote?
12 yea and 0 nay.
Motion passes. Communication number 2021-230, Dory Skrukerud, Greenway Project Manager, requesting Council of Commissioners authorization to request time on our May 26-21 Committee of the Whole meeting to present an update on the Silverbow Creek Greenway, and we just had that presentation. Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to place communication 2021-230 on file.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to place 2021-230 on file. Is there anything on the question? Would everyone please vote? Would anyone care to change their vote? Would the clerk please record the vote?
12 yea and 0 nay.
Motion passes. Communication number 2021-131, Ed Lester, Butte-Silver Sheriff, requesting Council of Commissioners concurrence and authorization for the Chief Executive to sign the MOU between Butte-Silver and the Southwest Montana Drug Task Force. And I see the sheriff is here. I don't know if you care to give us a brief update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, I'm Ed Lester, the Butte-Silver Sheriff. The communication that's on the agenda tonight is an agreement. Oops. I shouldn't push buttons while I'm talking, I guess. It's a memorandum of understanding between Butte-Silver law enforcement and the Drug Task Force. They changed some of the language in what's been submitted to you folks. I didn't agree with the language, and so I talked to Marty Haney, the agent, and we'll get some language that's agreeable to both sides to you as soon as we can come to an agreement.
Okay, thank you, and we will continue
Thank
to
you.
hold that in advance. Thanks for the update. Item 5, communication number 2021-248, Karen Burns, Community Development Director, requesting Council of Commissioners to approve the letter from Amy Klein requesting to purchase Butte-Silver property at 7 West Agate. I do believe this is running through the Land Sales Committee, and that because it's just came on board since last week. So we'll continue to hold that in abeyance until we get something back from them. Item 6, communication number 2021-254, Ed Banderab, 2601 Grand Avenue, requesting Council of Commissioners to request the Butte-Silver Chief Executive to request the Butte-Silver Health Department and Butte-Silver Board of Health to have the Butte-Silver Health Study Advisory Committee act as a community advisory council to review what has been done in other countries and communities to mitigate the health and economic impact of this COVID-19 virus and prepare an action plan should we get another virus that may not be contained by the current vaccines. This has been referred to the Board of Health, and they will be directing it to their next Health Study Advisory Committee meeting. So I still want to hold this in committee rather than just letting it go, because I think it might be a good idea to get some feedback on this. So if that's okay with everyone else, I'll hold this in advance. Communication number 2021-260, Angie Mullican, Public Works Budget Analyst, requesting Council of Commissioners for time on the June 16th, 2021 Council of Commissioners regular meeting to open a bid for dog kennels for the animal shelter. We will hold that until the June 16th meeting. Item 8, communication number 2021-262, Mark Neary, Public Works Director, requesting Council of Commissioners for time on the June 16th, 2021 Council of Commissioners regular meeting for a presentation on countywide maintenance district work plan update for FY 2021 and a work plan for FY 2022. We will hold that in advance until that meeting on the 16th. Item 9, communication number 2021-263, Mark Neary, Public Works Director, requesting Council of Commissioners for time on the June 16th, 2021 Council of Commissioners regular meeting to open bids for materials for the 2021 water main replacement projects. Again, we will wait to that date to have that presentation. And item 10 is communication number 2021-265, Patrick Canine, Public Works Engineer, requesting Council of Commissioners for time on the June 9th, 2021 Committee of the Whole meeting for a presentation with Bob Lazary, Parks and Rec Director, concerning the Basin Creek Reservoir. We did have that meeting just a minute ago, so Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to place communication 2021-265 on file.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to place communication 2021-265 on file. Anything on the question? Would everyone please vote? Would anyone care to change their vote? Would the clerk please record the vote?
12 yea and 0 nay.
Motion passes. Well, we're at that final moment of public comment on any public matter not on the agenda. Would you please come to the microphone and just give us your name and the address for the record?
Hi, my name's Lisa Warden, and I live at 7 West Pacific. And there's a property on 18 West Pacific, and it borders the Buffalo Mine. The land that the Buffalo Mine site is on is owned by the county. And this property owner that bought 18 West Pacific has been grading and burying trash and allowing workers to park on the Buffalo Mine site. And I wanted to bring it to your attention because there could be liability for the county if someone falls in. That mine has surface tunnels that are very close to the surface, and historically it's just been kind of a vacant lot with bramble growing on it, but he got an excavator and was excavating on the Buffalo Mine site. He doesn't own the land under his house, and he doesn't own the land on the Buffalo Mine site. And historically, in the last few years, we've had some mine subsidence where some openings have happened within a 2-block area of the Buffalo Mine site that had to be mitigated by dumping soil in it. So I just wanted to bring it to the attention of the commissioners to try to avoid maybe someone being hurt on his job site, because he's from out of state, I believe, and he doesn't realize what's going on. And then also, you know, I basically don't know where to go with it, but I'm just a concerned citizen. I own a house, and if the mine gets destabilized, maybe my foundation might get destabilized. I'm within a block of the Buffalo Mine site where he's been excavating it. So.
Okay. Thank you for your comments, and it is noted. one of the commissioners might be getting involved in that, so thank you very much.
Okay, yeah, I'm a bar certified law clerk. I work in town, and I'm just worried about the liability for the county, and there's people coming and going late at night associated with this site. He's allowing workers to live on the site, so people are walking through the Buffalo mine site, and who knows, someone could fall in or something like that, so, okay.
Thank you. Any other public comment from anyone else on any item not on tonight's agenda? And Commissioner Anderson.
I had a constituent of mine ask me to read something.
Oh.
Excuse me, let me turn this on. I had a constituent ask me to read something. He was unable to be here tonight, so if I could do that.
Certainly.
He was concerned about the
Can you give us a name and address for the record, Bill?
Ted Dressner. I don't have
Okay.
corner parking. Just asking, what is the ordinance for leaving a pile of potentially hazardous mine asbestos in a commercial environment after a fire? And how long will it take for Butte-Silver to allow this mess to blow around? He was just real concerned about that and was wondering where the liability is and when this is going to be cleaned up. If it is asbestos, if it's really watered down, and what we can do to mitigate further damage from this fire. Thank you.
Thank you. Colleen, do we have a letter to be read into the record?
We have
Two
two
letters? Okay.
First letter is from Sarah Rowling of 1005 South Colorado, Butte, Montana. Butte-Silver City Planning and other experts. Hello, and thank you in advance for your consideration. My concerns come from my experiences as a pedestrian in Butte, Montana. For over 8 years, I have lived just up from the Rosalie and have worked just below SSS. Often I choose to commute by foot, using the crosswalks to cross Front Street, most often the confluence of Front and Caw and the crosswalk near Safeway on Front. During this time, I have had multiple safety issues as a pedestrian. Even before the influx of traffic in this area, my safety as a pedestrian has become compromised further, and I have become afraid for my personal safety and the safety of others. I do not feel my presence as a pedestrian to be acknowledged in crosswalks. I do not feel, even within an engaged crosswalk, to be recognized as having the right-of-way. I am asking my city what more can be done for the safety of pedestrians. Would the city be willing to help educate my community about the right-of-way for pedestrians? Would it be possible to engineer traffic or install pedestrian-centric infrastructure? Last, could the pedestrian right-of-way be enforced? The sequence of my actions have been to first change my own habits. Frustratingly, I have acknowledged my presence as a pedestrian in a crosswalk does not guarantee any safety whatsoever. I have acknowledged this, but I do not accept it. I am sure to make eye contact with drivers and attempt to engage away from the drivers when crossing. I have written letters to the Montana Standard. When crosswalk lights go out, I call city maintenance. Shout out the city workers of Butte-Silver who each time have fixed the lights in the crosswalks. I also have enjoyed positive interactions with whom I was told to be the road secretary. I have requested a city traffic survey for the intersection outside SSS Front Street where Main becomes Caw. I have reached out to my commissioner for District 8, John Reardon, who encouraged me to write this letter. Thank you for listening and considering the pedestrian safety. I look forward to seeing your solutions. My best to you and your families. Sarah, thank you, Sarah Rowling. The second letter is from Dr. John W. Ray. Progress, where we stand with Montana Pole Plant. When one is presented with some goods to the marketplace and is told that these are the best goods available, one accepts them and makes do. Hey, go. I have been involved with the Pole Plant Superfund cleanup for some time, going back to when it was an EPA lead many years ago. I have been a strong critic of the cleanup, but it is fitting and proper as well as right to recognize significant progress when it occurs. It is also important to keep pointing out remaining problems with the pole plant cleanup and hold the Montana Department of Environmental Quality, MDEQ, which is the lead agency spearheading the cleanup, accountable. MDEQ has been remiss in being open, accessible, accountable, and responsive to the public. Community involvement activities by MDEQ need to be improved. People not only want to know what an agency is going to do, but also why. The public justify requires more than just assurances that all will be well. Explanations backed by data are needed. The public also has a right to meaningful involvement in the process. Number one, after conferring with an expert on bioremediation, I have come to accept the conclusion that at the present time, bioremediation of dioxin is not practical. She has assured me that a CAMU, which if properly implemented, monitored, and maintained, should be protective. I realize it is pointless pursuing a remedy such as a bioremediation that cannot happen. While it would have been preferable for the bioremediation to work on the dioxin, she is a trustworthy expert on bioremediation of sites such as the pole plant told me that it is not feasible at present. I have also done my own extensive research and reached the same conclusion on my own about the inadequacy of bioremediation as an approach to cleaning up dioxin. A waste-in-place remedy that relies on institutional controls and caps is not the best solution, but it is the best possible solution. The perfect cannot be the enemy of the good. The public will have to remain ever vigilant to ensure that the waste-in-place remedy is correctly initiated and maintained. 2, I have already addressed the cash-out sufficiency cost issue in another email. I believe the mechanisms are in place to address this issue, but greater transparency, openness, and accountability are needed from MDEQ. MDEQ needs to more seriously consider what will be done if the current funds are inadequate for the cleanup. Simply telling the public, "Don't worry," is insufficient. I have reproduced the extensive comments and made a cost at the end of this email. Again, I don't think that MDEQ has taken this issue seriously enough. 3, MDEQ says there are no air or water emissions from the pole plant that exceed EPA standards. That is great news. 4, MDEQ has a comprehensive program for implementing the remedy, for monitoring the remedy's functioning, and for maintaining the remedy at least on paper. But no piece of paper ever cleaned up a site, so the public will definitely need to be vigilant at the staying involved with monitoring the remedy. MDEQ will need to be transparent and proactive in providing information to the public. Too often, getting information from MDEQ is like pulling teeth, so to speak. 5, the state is committed to promoting environmental justice, and that is very welcomed. We have yet to see, however, any concrete plan or proposal from the MDEQ for doing this. 6, in the past, community involvement has been spotty at best. There is in place now a comprehensive community involvement plan and approach which the agency has committed itself to implementing. Hopefully, just as we are getting from EPA on their leaked sites, the state will provide regular updates as to remediation activities at the pole plant. If not, we should demand that information be provided and that there are in place sufficient feedback mechanisms. It must be noted that effective community involvement has been a hallmark of the state's performance. If EPA can take a more active role, things will improve. Over the last several years, EPA has been effective with community involvement under Robert Mueller and currently under Dana Marnold. 7, odors have been a problem at the pole plant. Odors emanating from the sites, such as the pole plant, are not just indicators of environmental problems, but are problems in and of themselves for sensitive populations. MDEQ has committed itself to monitor and to the extent possible ameliorate the problems of odors from the pole plant. With the above said, it appears from presentations made by MDEQ that they as yet do not have a handle on what to do about odors emanating from the pole plant. MDEQ must clearly articulate what plans are in place to mitigate odors emanating from the pole plant, and what backup or redundant procedures are in place should initial efforts prove to be unsuccessful. 8, the state is aware of the problems regarding sites with areas that adjourn each other, have different cleanup standards, and touch each other, such as at the pole plant. Sincere efforts, I believe, are being made to address this issue. We need more information from the state as to what those efforts are going to be. 9, the state has pledged a robust effort to monitor the CAMU performance. While just relying on the 5-year review would be inadequate, the state has pledged to monitor the site on a regular, frequent basis. Again, the public should look forward to reports. However, MDEQ's specific monitoring protocols are unclear and need to be fleshed out for the public. 10, MDEQ has said that should bioremediation be feasible in the future, they will reevaluate its use. This is good to hear. I don't know how really committed the state is to do this, but we can hope. 11, the state has committed itself to working with local authorities to help in the development of future land uses of the site as appropriate. That is welcomed. Butte local government has an excellent Superfund team in place, and we can be confident that they will be vigilant. 12, the institutional controls needed at the site are also poorly conceived and articulated. Hopefully that will improve in the future. 13, serious contamination under the interstate has yet to be addressed and needs to be fairly quickly. What will the cost be? How will it be done? Who will do it? When will it be done? We need answers to these questions sooner rather than later. 14, while this is an MDEQ lead, this is a federal Superfund site, and EPA has been actively involved. The current EPA project manager is trustworthy, open, and very competent. The public can rely on her for accurate and timely information. The public can take an added assurance that the remedy will be implemented correctly given the available EPA expertise. EPA has also pledged to be involved in the community involvement efforts at the pole plant. Again, EPA has an excellent community involvement person working in Butte, and that should give the public confidence that we will be well informed and involved. I personally would welcome greater EPA involvement. 15, I think that MDEQ is sincere in its commitment to develop and implement a fully protective remedy at the pole plant. I have been impressed with their verbally expressed comment to provide and promote effective community involvement, but words need to be matched with deeds. In the past, the state has promised more effective community outreach, and it has not materialized. We will see as action matches words. The cleanup of the pole plant has been spotty in the past, but I think based on what I have heard and read recently, and after reading the responsiveness summary to public comments regarding the ESD, as well as statements from agency personnel, we have hopefully turned the page on the cleanup and can look forward to the protective remediation efforts that should address human and environmental concerns. It remains for the MDEQ to be transparent with the public and for the public to maintain its vigilance, but we are on the right track if MDEQ does what it says it will do. Much more work needs to be done by MDEQ in the area of community involvement, particularly in terms of keeping the neighborhoods adjacent to the pole plant fully involved and informed. Incorporating environmental justice concerns into the ongoing cleanup is in the nascent stage and unclear at present. MDAQ needs to address the contamination under the interstate. It is pointless to wish for what cannot be in terms of environmental cleanup. Superfund sites clearly attest for the need of pollution prevention in the first place. Few polluted sites can be made totally whole, so we have what it is probably the best possible remedy for the pole plant. Bioremediation of dioxin doesn't work at present. It is a waste of time to wish it did. This is a cash-out site, and we are constrained by that. Much more needs to be done with regard to odor prevention and controlling and articulating institutional controls, community involvement, addressing contamination under the interstate, and environmental justice. But the framework for this successful cleanup is present, and we must strive to succeed in that endeavor. As I said before, constant oversight and scrutiny of what the state is doing is needed. We need to hold MDAQ accountable for providing timely information and providing venues for meaningful public involvement. Cost and the pole plant, number one. Hopefully, there will be enough money, but I have grave doubts about this. The estate has steadfastly maintained that there will be enough, but the cleanup as a waste-in-the-place solution will have to last a long time into the future based on dollar amounts calculated last century. Let us do the math as we know it. $29 million remains in the cash-out fund. The yearly cost of operating the water treatment plant ranges on the low end and to $400,000 per year and the high end to $1 million. The necessary life of the water plant at a minimum is 46 years. So splitting the difference, let us say that yearly cost is $700,000 over 46 years. That would be $32.2 million. If the cost is $1 million a year, we are looking at $46 million, which would make the deficit much higher. Add to that, the cost of the CAMU construction is around $2 million. The switch to a cap instead of bioremediation is around $1.5 million, and added to that will be the cost of removing contamination from under the interstate, which could be $7 million. So far, we have reached $43 million. Subtracting that from the $29 million remains, we have a deficit of about $14 million. If the water treatment plant is $1 million a year, the deficit would be $28 million. The deficit does not include the cost of operation and maintenance of the site. Also, the water treatment plant may well have to go more than 46 years. Remember, too, that government cost predictions are often grossly underestimated. Things always seem to cost more than planned. Who will pay for the cost overrun? Will the cleanup be compromised? This is a significant potential shortfall. Number two, if the money proves to be inadequate, there are reopeners in both the CD for the pole plant and the Memorandum of Agreement, Section 8, Paragraph 19 of the CD, and the Memorandum of Agreement between the EPA and the MDAQ of 1996. 3. If it becomes necessary to reopen, a $6 million immediate upfront cost to be borne by the agencies will be incurred for reopening the cash-out settlement. Could become tricky. It is estimated that the major portion of the $6 million reopener would be borne by EPA and about 20% by MDEQ. MDEQ has a legally binding agreement with EPA to complete the cleanup as specified in the ROD and the CD for the site. Above this $6 million reopener fee, the state would roughly have to come up with between $8 and $22 million in new money. 4. EPA would seek to obtain the money from Superfund Priority Panel. This would be likely in that this is an ongoing project and EPA would not abandon an ongoing cleanup. The state says that it would seek a legislative appropriation for their portion. However, the legislation only meets every 2 years, and given the current political climate, approval by the legislature is far from assured. What happens if the state can't find $1.2 million for its portion? EPA might the whole bill, or the settlement of the site could be reopened and EPA could go after the PRPS. 5, the PRPS could challenge the reopening in court, but in general, the court side with the agency determination that more funds are needed. But again, this is uncertain. 6, cost concerns are assured and promised by MDAQ will not be allowed and diminish the cleanup specified in the ROD and the CD. But any legal obligation incurred by these promises is unlikely. 7, MDAQ will have to demonstrate the need for additional monies clearly and accurately. So there remain major and significant cost uncertainties, but unless you are an oracle at Delphi, predicting the future is always uncertain, particularly when it comes to monetary issues. There is a cause for concern, big cause. It does appear that it seems that it is more likely than not that an additional monies would be found should that be necessary. But that is far from certain. But it looks like there will be a cost overrun that is significant. MDAQ should not gloss over this. Full transparency, which we have not had from the state, is warranted and should be demanded.
Thank you, Colleen. Anything else to come before us this evening before we adjourn? I would entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn. Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Thanks, everyone. Oh, and by the way, my esteemed vice chair is going to take over for me next Wednesday for the next regular meeting. I'll be in Seattle, so second grandchild. First one birthday and the second one graduating. I couldn't pick one.